Welcome back to Chapter 6, Grammatical Roles. So as we discussed on a previous video, there were 5 different verb phrase patterns that we were looking at. And I have written an example of each one here. Okay, the first sentence, the sun rises, that's your intransitive verb, right? We have a verb, rises. There's no direct object. It cannot take a direct object. The verb rises feels the predicate on its own and does not take any object. The second example, she called her father. That's an example of a transitive verb pattern. We have the verb call, and then we have a noun phrase that follows as our direct object. That's the person whom she called, right? The third example, she gave him a nice gift. The verb give is an example of a ditransitive verb. She gave what? She gave a nice gift. That's our direct, she gave a nice gift. That's what she gave, but she gave it to whom, right? Who did she give the gift to? Him, right? Whoever him is, okay? So our direct object would be a nice gift, and then we have an indirect object. Him, the person she gave the gift to. We've got 2 noun phrases after the verb. I am the king, okay, the verb be, I am, right, is the prototype of linking verb, which gives us a subject complement. The subject I, the noun phrase that follows the king, well, the king and I and the king are the same person. We are equal, so the king is the subject complement. Whereas in the last example, she named her dog Patches. We've got 2 noun phrases following the verb. Patches and her dog and Patches, those 2 things are the same. So you've got object, direct object and object complement. Okay, now let's quickly look at the pattern that we see going on with these 5 sentences. And when we break down these 5 sentences into noun phrases and then verbs, we can start to see some patterns. The first thing you'll notice is that intransitive verb, it's the only one that has a verb that isn't followed by a noun phrase, right? We have the subject, which is a noun phrase, and then the verb all by itself. It doesn't look like any of the other ones. So if I get a sentence where I've got a verb like this, and there's no noun phrase after it, I can be pretty confident that I've got an intransitive verb. That one's thankfully a little easy, right? But if we look at the other 5, look at that transitive verb pattern. We've got a noun, the subject, of course, is a noun phrase. You've got a verb, you've got a single noun phrase after. But if we look over to the right, when we look at the subject complement pattern, you've also got a noun phrase and a verb followed by a single noun phrase. Oh, they look identical, right? And then if we look at the ditransitive verb pattern, we've got the verb followed by 2 noun phrases. But if we look at the object complement pattern, we've got a verb followed by 2 noun phrases. So you've got 2 pairs of sentences that we've identified a noun phrase as the subject, a verb, and then we've got either 1 noun phrase following or 2 noun phrases following, right? So how do I identify when I see just 1 noun phrase after? I need to be able to identify that. Well, that is it a direct object? And I have a transitive verb pattern, or is it a subject complement? And I have that subject complement verb pattern. If I see 2 noun phrases after the verb, I need to be able to identify it as a ditransitive verb, or I've got an object complement pattern. Okay, so this is where these 2 are going to be where you need to identify the same pattern, but you need to identify what the grammatical roles are. And down here, it looks like we have the same pattern with two noun phrases following the verb, but we need to figure out what the roles are. And this is what this video is all about. So in this video, we're going to talk about rules of identification, how to identify the verb phrase pattern and how to identify the grammatical role of all those noun phrases. Okay? So the first thing we're going to look at is that question of whether or not this is a transitive verb pattern or a subject complement verb pattern. Okay? So we have some examples. Mallory took a chill pill. Again, noun phrase, verb, and a single noun phrase following the verb. Brittany became a kindergarten teacher. Got a noun phrase, verb, followed by a single noun phrase. So just identifying the phrases isn't helping us out any, right? Is the subject, verb, direct object, or is it subject, verb, subject, complement? Okay, now you can go, wow, took a chill. Mallory's not the chill pill, so obviously the first sentence is a direct object, and it's obvious, right, that the second sentence is subject complement. Well, just because you're a native English speaker, you know English, you know what these words mean, but how do we explain it in a scientific way, right? Let's get down to the nitty-gritty, right? Not just, oh, I know it, it's obvious. But how can we classify it, define it, okay? So rule number one, replace the verb with the verb to be. Whatever the verb is, just put that be verb in there. So if it's Mallory took a chill pill, replace the verb took with be. Mallory is a chill pill? No, that doesn't make any sense. But if it's Brittany became a kindergarten teacher and I replace the verb become with the be verb, Brittany is a kindergarten teacher. Hey, that makes sense. Okay, so I know because I cannot replace the verb took with the verb is in the first situation, chill pill must be the direct object because Mallory is definitely not a chill pill. But since I can replace the verb became with the be verb, and Brittany is a kindergarten teacher, and that's still truthful, a truthful statement, then kindergarten teacher must be the subject complement. Okay? Go ahead and try it. Okay, we have some examples here. Replace the verb, right, with the be verb. Remained, past tense becomes was. Siegfried and Roy tamed, okay, it becomes were, okay. So what do we got here? Well, tigers, obviously, Siegfried and Roy are not tigers, right? So that's our direct object. But Mr. Burns is the boss. That's our subject complement. Okay. The second rule is that we replace, not really a rule, it's kind of like a test, right? We're testing this out. Go ahead and replace that second noun phrase that's following the verb with an adjective phrase. So again, we had Mallory took a chill pill. Let's replace that noun phrase, a chill pill, with an adjective phrase, like very awesome. Okay. Or the second sentence, we take that noun phrase that comes after the verb, replace it with an adjective phrase, very awesome. Okay, which one makes sense? Okay, so obviously Mallory took very awesome. That doesn't make any sense. So that again tells me that chill pill has got to be the direct object. But because I can replace kindergarten teacher with an adjective phrase, and it still makes sense, Brittany became awesome. She's an awesome kindergarten teacher. Okay, that tells me that kindergarten teacher is my subject complement. Okay, so on these examples, again, we have ended up. Instead of accountant, we take the noun phrase, put an adjective phrase. We have our new sofa. Let's take that noun phrase out, put an adjective phrase. Which one makes sense? Which one is logical? Okay, that's got to be our direct, the one that's, not logical is going to be the direct object. Right? The one that's logical, Isabel ended up so cool. Okay, cool. That makes sense. That's our subject complement. Cool? I hope so. Okay. Another test. You can replace that second noun phrase. Again, the noun phrase that's following the verb, if it's a direct object, we should be able to replace it with an object pronoun. She took a chill pill. If that's our direct object, we should be able to replace it with an object pronoun. She took it. Okay. Isabella ended up an accountant. If accountant is a direct object, we should be able to replace it with an object pronoun. Isabella ended up her. Okay, well, I like the first one. Mallory took it. That's okay. So that's our direct object. Isabella ended up her. I don't like that one. So we know that that's got to be our subject complement. Okay. So I cannot replace a subject complement with an object pronoun. It's called an object pronoun for a reason. The object pronoun, it's a pronoun for my object, right? So if it's my direct object, I should be able to replace it with an object pronoun. If I try to replace it with an object pronoun and it doesn't make any sense, I know it's not my direct object. It's my complement. Okay, try these examples out. So again, which one works? Okay, Siegfried and Roy, right? So again, I can use them and it makes sense. But he remained him? No, I don't like it. So that's not my direct object. That's got to be a complement. Okay. Our second question, right? We had those verbs that are followed by two noun phrases. And we need to decide, is it ditransitive or object complement? Okay. So we have this sentence here. And we see that after the verb, we have two noun phrases. And then our second sentence, our second example, also is a verb followed by two noun phrases. They look the same when we kind of break it apart and label them as noun phrase and verb, but they're doing something very different, right? So we need to decide, what are those two noun phrases after the verb? Is it an indirect object and a direct object? Or do we have a direct object and an object complement? Okay. So basically we're deciding, is this a ditransitive verb pattern or an object complement verb pattern? Okay. So very similar to our test for subject complement. Let's use the verb be. So we're going to look at those two noun phrases that follow the verb and try to put them in a sentence with a be verb. Okay, Leah considered the party a success. That second noun phrase, the party. And then there's a third noun phrase, a success. Okay. Can we put a be verb there and it still makes sense? The party was a success. What do you think? In this sentence, we have the second noun phrase, her mother, and a third noun phrase, a birthday cake. Can we connect those with the be verb and say her mother was a birthday cake? I think the first one works, right? The second one doesn't. Her mother is not a birthday cake, right? So that means those are two different entities, right? Which means that one of them's got to be the direct object and one of them's the indirect object. The party was a success. Those are the same thing, right? So we've got a direct object and its object complement. The party and the success are the same thing. Okay, try these examples out. Does that work? Does that work? Does it make sense? Okay. So because Susie is most definitely not a book, we've got a case of direct object and indirect object, two objects. But Mark is the treasurer, right? That's the same thing. So we've got a case of direct object and object complement. Okay, again, very similar to our test, one of our earlier tests. Let's try to replace that third noun phrase with an adjective phrase and see what happens. Okay. So Leah considered the party a success. That third noun phrase, a success, let's change it and make it an adjective phrase. Maybe something like very fun. And in this sentence, we take the third noun phrase, a birthday cake, and replace it with an adjective phrase. And very fun. Which one makes sense? Okay. Well, Bailey did not bake her mother very fun. That doesn't make any sense. So we know that, right? That's got to be two objects. But in the first sentence, yeah, that still makes sense. You can consider something. She considered the party a success. You can have an object complement, a noun phrase, but you can also consider the party successful or very fun. You can have an adjective phrase there, right? So in that case, we know that in the first sentence, we've got a direct object and its object complement. Okay. You'll notice right away that in all these cases, you're going to have a direct object, right? It'll either be a direct object and an indirect object, or a direct object and an object complement. Or in the case of transitive verb, it might just be a direct object by itself. You will never, please take this in mind. I wish I could, I had thought ahead to maybe put a big funny stop sign here or warning sign picture on my slideshow. Warning, warning, warning. You will never have a sentence with an indirect object only. You must have a direct object if you have an indirect object. And you will never have a sentence with an object complement only. You must have a direct object to have an object complement. Okay? So you will have, if you have one noun phrase after the verb phrase, right? You can have a direct object by itself. That's fine. Or you can have a direct object with an indirect object. Or you can have a direct object with an object complement. But you can see here, you must have at least a direct object to have these other two, right? Okay, I hope that's clear. Please make a note of it if you're taking notes now. Okay, let's try some more examples. Carpenter built Tim a new pool deck. Okay, we take the third noun phrase, a new pool deck, replace it with an adjective phrase. Boring. Okay. And in this sentence, we take the third noun phrase, a failure, replace it with an adjective phrase. Boring. Which sentence makes sense? Okay. The carpenter built Tim boring? That doesn't make any sense. So that means that Tim and the pool deck must be two separate objects. In the second example, though, the conference is boring. Yeah, okay, sometimes the conference is boring. I have been to my share of boring conferences. Okay. So again, that's going to be an direct object with its complement. Okay. Next sort of test or rule, we can take that second and third noun phrase, those two noun phrases following the verb, and we can switch them around. We'll need to add a preposition if we do that. Okay. So again, if we have Leah considered the party a success, we might switch around and put success first, party second. Is there a preposition I could add between them that would still keep the sentence logical? And I can't think of one. I can't think of a preposition that I could put there that would make that sentence logical. Okay. Whereas here, Bailey baked her mother a birthday cake. If I switch around mother and cake, I can put the preposition for. She baked a birthday cake for her mother. And to me, that sounds perfectly fine. That is a grammatical English sentence. So again, if I can do this old switcheroo and add a preposition, that tells me I've got two objects, right? A direct object and an indirect object. And notice the indirect object is the one that goes after that preposition. The direct object is so closely tied to the verb, it's going to go right next to the verb there, right? That's your direct object. If I can separate the indirect object with a preposition, that's indirect. It's a little further away in meaning, right? That's why I can do this switch and put a preposition there, because the indirect object is a little further away from in relationship to the verb. Okay, but in the first example, again, there's no preposition I can put there that would make that sentence make sense. So I know, because I cannot do this old switcheroo with the first example, that's got to be an object and an object complement, right? So it's the object and object complement have to stay in that order. You can't switch them around. You can't put in a preposition there. Let's look at a few more examples. Oh my God, my son. Oh, well, he's not happy. He doesn't like grammar. Okay. Brooke sent her mother a postcard. Switch grandmother and postcard around and think of a preposition? I think two would go there pretty nicely. Okay. We named our third son Arthur. There's Arthur on a bad day. Okay, probably 2 years ago. Okay. Can you switch Arthur and third son around and add a preposition? And I don't think you can, right? It's not grammatical. So because I can do the old switcheroo on the first example with grandmother and postcard to her grandmother, that tells me I have a direct object and indirect object. Notice again, indirect object will be the one after the preposition, to her grandmother. But with Arthur and his name, I can't switch them around, right? So that tells me I have an object and a complement relationship there. Okay. So here's where you can practice a little bit. I will create another video where you can kind of look at the examples, then pause the video and practice. And hopefully it will be clear to you.